But, mate, you've got no better ideas. You make no more sense than when we talk Australian football.
Okay.
We're going to start with the Matildas. Now, there's a lot being said off the field, but we're interested in the on-field focus.
Okay.
The Matildas, 3 losses in the She Believes Cup so far. Japan, they went down 4-0. USA, ranked number 1 in the world, 2-1. Probably a better result than 4-0 to Japan. And then 2-1 today to Colombia.
Yep.
Next up, they've got 2 friendlies in early April against South Korea. Where are they sitting at the moment? Because we know the Asian Cup's on the horizon. We are hosting the Asian Cup in this country.
1 year from today. It was announced today. Yep.
1 year from today. So the Matildas, there was all this momentum with that World Cup.
Yes.
It was all good feelings. It was all good vibes. We were all on board with the Tillies. Seems like results aren't where we kind of would like to see them at the moment. What's going on, mate?
Well, before I start, spoiler alert. So I always like to admit this as well.
Yep.
I only watched the second half of today's game. So I didn't watch the first half. I didn't watch the American game, nor did I watch the Japan game. I did watch, however, the Matildas when they played in the Olympics, and that wasn't. Let's put it straight. That was a bit of a disaster in the Olympic Games, especially coming straight back off. But let's just keep it really, really simple. Number one, after being told, today is 1 year to the day that the Asian Cup will start here. Okay,
Yep.
So they've got an interim manager at the moment, Tommy Samani. Okay, now it would have been difficult. I can understand them having to wait because after the Olympics, 24, 25, then I think all the rosters were done around the world for all the women's teams, so it's hard to get a coach. You've got to also understand as well, from a context perspective, that coaches may want, a lot of things can happen. They might want to wait, this, that, and the other. So they've got to sort that out as soon as they possibly can, okay? Whether they keep Tommy Samani on, whether they get somebody else from overseas, whether they get somebody else here from Australia. I'm always of the view, and I'd love to hear from our listeners about this, when you have a major tournament at home and you're a country that can actually, win it, which is well within our range, that you should have a manager, in my opinion. I don't rule out anything, but I'd always look for a manager from that country. Like, with the Rugby World Cup, I'd always look first for Australian manager. Same with this as well. So whether that means they give it to Tommy Samani full-time or somebody else, an Ante Juric or someone like that, that will be down to them, but that's got to be sorted out. The thing I noticed in the second half, this is from purely, and this is for people who know football, I'll try to explain it in the most simplest terms possible for those who don't know the intricacies of football. I saw a problem structurally from an attacking perspective, which I saw at the Olympics as well, and that is their best player is Mary Fowler.
Yep.
She can make a difference. She can do things that other people cannot do. And that includes creating and scoring goals as well. Their inability to get the ball to her. Now, she came on after the 60th minute, but still has more than enough time, 30 minutes. And their inability to find her in space, or even if she hasn't got space, because she's good enough when people are marking her, that was a worrying thing. And the last thing is, one of the best players in the world over the last 4 or 5 years, Sam Kerr, they were missing her. Now, it's never a good time to lose. Don't get me wrong. It's never a good time to lose. But in our sport, if you are to lose, better to be doing it in between major events than at the major events.
Off-cycle losses.
Yes, you know what I mean? So better to do it as you're building up. But there's no doubt that a lot of the shine from the world, but this is understandable as well. I remember the Socceroos when I came back here in 2008. They were riding on the way from the 2006 World Cup.
Yes.
And remember the Asian Cup the following year, they went, they got knocked out by the quarterfinals. By the time the 2010 World Cup had come round, a lot of people were a bit off them too because of the way that they were playing. Then they got spanked in that first game at the South African World Cup 4-0 by Germany, and things go in cycles. Things do go in cycles, but this is going to be absolutely huge because I think, a lot of people actually say we expect to win it, but after seeing the result against Japan, I'm not so sure you can say that. The Asian Cup is going to be absolutely huge. I think par, in other words, like a must be minimum semi-finals, but a lot of people would say minimum to win a minimum final, but I would say with the improvement of women's football all around the world, that minimum would be semi-finals for a home World Cup as well. So those are my observations. And I like I said to you, I spoke to a lady at White Water Sports today in the social media part. Alyssa, I put all those thoughts a little bit more in detail. But again, I watched the second half of today out of the 3 games. But those are my observations. So there we go.
Just on that. So couple of things. Do you think that the general public, because there's football fans like yourself who are invested in the game, and then when we see these World Cups and the big events, it's I don't want to say bandwagon, but it's the rest of us that come along that pay less attention in these off-cycle periods.
I welcome that. No problem.
Do you think the expectations for that group of people is potentially too high sometimes in terms of what we expect our national sides to achieve?
Perhaps so, but in all fairness to the fans and that are out there, whether they're bandwaggers or not, whatever you want to call them, innocent fans. And this is understandable as well. I just want to park this. Come back to what you were going to say right then. But let's just go back to the fans and then say, Boz, and then come back to that other thing you're going to say, right?
Yep.
There has been massive hype, and deservedly so, because of how the Matildas have done. They got to the World Cup semi-final, albeit at home. It doesn't matter. They still got to the World Cup semi-final. It captured the imagination of everyone here in Australia, nearly, right? They got to the Olympics, the previous Olympics, not the Paris ones, the 2020. They got to the semi-finals there as well, and the hype that came around it was justifiably, in my opinion, brilliant for all of them. Since then, they haven't quite lived up to it. That's another stage of their progression that they've got to learn to deal with. They said the 2024 Olympics last year was not good. We know that. And I just feel the general sense of opinion with a lot of people when you look in social media is that they haven't quite lived up to the hype. Okay, and I can understand where that's coming from. But you know the one I said to you, come back to as well?
Yes.
So you got to think to you as well, there hasn't been a great deal to shout about in Australian football for quite some time either.
Yes.
All right, with what's happened with the A-League and this, that, and the other. This is, when I say this is for Football Australia and football in general, this is the golden egg. So they're going to protect that with their lives, understandably so. But it's a very difficult job because, as you know, in football, you've got all teams and you've got, the A-League going on, which has nothing really to do with Football Australia, even though they're sort of looking, they'd be like, oh, it's not good. But you still, you've got the young Socceroos, who are a marvellous achievement. First time in 12 years to qualify for a young World Cup, which I said the correlation between young teams doing well and then the older teams doing well in girls and boys is very strong. So, but you've got this is like I said, the golden egg. So you've got to defend it as much as you can, but you just got to be careful because there is a line. There is a line. And when I say that, I mean it like this. And this is very difficult. You work, you want to, as, say, commentators and so forth, people have got to be held to account, but you've got to be careful how far you go.
Yes.
And if you're getting pressure from people above as well, it's a very, very fine balance that there is. But let's not forget as well, I'm sure Matildas fans, I remember this during the build-up to the World Cup and the 2023 World Cup and that Tony Gustafsson was making millions of changes. And I can understand during the friendlies. Yeah. They were getting beat left, right and centre. And I was saying to people, they're only friendlies. There's never a good time to lose, but if there ever is one, it's them. That's the time. And look what he achieved. So, like I said, don't get too down on this. They're definitely, after seeing this a year out from this Asian Cup, from what I watched in that second half today, that structural problem needs to be sorted out. In terms of the personnel and that, whether they want different personnel, again, that comes down to who is going to be the manager.
So on the manager, we've got Samani is just it's always been he's the interim coach.
Yeah.
There's this text here from Lundy actually. Trevor Morgan for Matilda's coach. Trevor Morgan is the current
he's the young Socceroos coach.
Coach.
Well, I mean, I don't know Trevor whether or not he's coached women's football before. And see, this is another point as well. So I keep saying, women's football, which has come on leaps and bounds, but it's still very different to men's football, and I mean that in the most respectful way.
So I different saw that structures and strengths.
And different, and they're just, they're in relative sort of sense, in terms of what they've gone through as a code, they're just now coming to the fore. Whereas, men's football has been around for that much longer, so it's evolved that much.
It's been professionalised.
So here's my point as well, and this is my point before the Women's World Cup. I can remember companies around the world going, "Can you commentate for it?" I remember saying to them, "I would love to," but I used to say to them, "Spoiler alert, it's not my expertise. I could give you a point of view from the football I know, but that might not be applicable." Now, a lot of people say football's football. It is, but it's played differently in different leagues in the world, let alone in terms of like women's football, men's football. And I mean that in the most respectful way. The progress that they've made in women's football has been absolutely amazing, worldwide. Absolutely well. Even in terms of the World Cup, I watched the World Cup, if you watch the World Cup, I think it was in France in 2019, The difference between that and 2023 was night and day. It's getting better and better all the time. So coming back to the Trevor Morgan thing, that's why I'm saying this is, what type of experience has he got? In women's football, yes.
Okay.
And I would say as well, in terms of managing personalities and managing the team and that would probably be very different as well. So, and coming back to there will be pressure on and expectation from the Australian public that they minimum reach the semi-finals.
Okay, so
Yeah?
let's do a hypothetical.
And I'm talking about the Asian Cup. Yeah.
Well, let's do a hypothetical now. You're in charge of Football Australia.
Yeah.
You've flagged now. You've told me that you need to lock in your manager because we're 12 months out and you need time. So the next 2 friendlies are in early April against South Korea. If I'm putting you on the spot, I know you're not going to like this.
Yeah.
Who are you locking in for your manager?
Well, right now, like I said to you, I would like to go for somebody local. And the best person that I know for that would be Ivan Juric, who coaches Sydney FC, and that. Or do we know that Tommy Samani hasn't put his hat into the ring either? Because he's got a lot of experience. A lot of people might turn their nose, but has he? Is this the reason why that he didn't really overly experiment during this time? Because he wants to put a case forward for him as well. That he can do a good job. You know what I mean? So this is what I mean by the quicker you can get a manager, stroke coach, whatever you want to call it, in, if he needs to do some or she needs to do some experimentation, they can do it right now because the time's ticking now. It's 365 days from today, so you got to have a general idea, at least a month out from the tournament, barring injuries or suspensions, but a month out from the tournament, what you think is going to be your starting 11. And how do you think that you're going to be able to get the best out of that team, i.e. how you're going to play?
You're still here? We'll see more on the Joel and Fletch socials and catch us live on SEN Radio. Because if you don't, you're an A grade. But if you do, you're the absolute Mickey.